The massive space station called the Nexus floated in the darkness between stars like a metal city. Its towers and rings spun slowly, creating artificial gravity for the millions of beings who lived and worked inside. This was the center of galactic power, home to the Galactic Prosperity Council that had ruled over hundreds of worlds for 3,000 years. Commander Jake Harrison walked through the station's wide corridors, his boots clicking on the polished metal floor. Other beings moved past him, tall, thin creatures with blue skin, short, furry aliens with 4 arms, and dozens of other species he had never seen before. They all glanced at him with curious eyes. Humans were still new to this part of the galaxy. Jake wore his best uniform, dark blue with silver buttons. The human flag patch on his shoulder looked small compared to the colorful symbols worn by other species. He carried a simple tablet computer and tried to look calm, even though his heart was beating fast. Today would change everything for humanity. The council chamber was enormous. The ceiling stretched up so high that Jake could barely see the top. 12 massive seats arranged in a circle dominated the center of the room. Each seat was designed for a different species, from the crystal chair that glowed with inner light to the pool of liquid where one council member floated. Hundreds of other beings filled the viewing galleries that surrounded the chamber. Representatives from every known species had come to watch. They whispered to each other in languages that sounded like music, grinding metal, or electronic beeps. Jake noticed how they all seemed nervous, their eyes darting between him and the council members. The Supreme Arbiter rose from the central seat. Zethkalar was 12 feet tall and made of living crystal that changed colors as he moved. His voice echoed through the chamber like distant thunder when he spoke. "The council recognizes Commander Harrison of the species called humans," Zethkalar said. "You appear before us to answer for your people's actions." Jake stood straight and looked up at the towering figure. "Thank you, Supreme Arbiter. I am here to represent humanity and our colonies." "Your colonies," the crystal being's colors shifted to deep red. "That is precisely why you stand before us today. Your species has violated the expansion accords. You have established 17 unauthorized settlements beyond your designated sectors." A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, showing a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked human colonies scattered across several star systems. Jake recognized each one: New Angeles, Liberty Point, Haven's Rest, and 14. Others, each dot represented millions of human lives. "These worlds were empty when we arrived," Jake said carefully. "We found no signs of intelligent life or prior claims." "Irrelevant?" Another council member spoke, a creature that looked like a giant squid floating in a tank of green liquid. "All expansion must be approved by this council. You have ignored proper procedures." Jake looked around the chamber. He could see fear in the faces of the other species representatives. They had all been through this before. They knew what came next. Zethkalar's crystal body flashed bright white. "The penalty for unauthorized expansion is clear. Your species will pay tribute to maintain galactic order. The amount has been calculated based on your industrial capacity and colonial population." The holographic display changed, showing columns of numbers. Jake's tablet beeped as the formal demand was transmitted to him. His eyes widened as he read the figures. 40% of all industrial output, Zethkalar continued, plus immediate relocation of 3 million colonists to designated reservation worlds. This tribute will continue annually to ensure your species remains peaceful. The chamber fell. Silent. Jake could hear his own breathing and the soft hum of the station's air recycling systems. 40% would destroy human civilization before it had truly begun. The forced relocations would tear apart families and communities. "I see," Jake said quietly. He made notes on his tablet, his fingers moving steadily across the screen. "And if we refuse?" "Refusal is not an option that ends well," rumbled a council member who looked like a living mountain of black stone. "The Korthik learned this lesson 2 centuries ago. The Villani discovered it 50 years past. Compliance ensures survival." Jake glanced up at the viewing galleries. A young alien with Silver skin and large eyes, was watching him intently. She gave him the smallest nod, and Jake realized she was trying to tell him something. Other representatives looked away when he met their eyes, afraid to show any sympathy. "How long do we have to consider this proposal?" Jake asked. "Proposal?" Zethkalar's crystal form turned bright orange. "This is not a negotiation, human. This is the judgment of the Council. Nevertheless, such an important decision requires consultation with my government. Surely the Council understands the need for proper consideration." The Council members exchanged glances. Jake noticed they were used to immediate surrender. His calm response seemed to confuse them. "Very well," Zethkalar said finally. "Your species has 72 standard hours to comply with these terms. After that deadline passes, the Council will take necessary action to ensure galactic stability." "Thank you for your patience," Jake said, bowing slightly. "We will provide our response within the allotted time." As the session ended, Jake walked toward the exit. The other representatives watched him go, some with pity, others with curiosity. The silver-skinned alien managed to brush past him in the corridor. "Be careful," she whispered in accented English. "The Council has never been refused." "They have weapons you cannot imagine," Jake smiled at her. "Thank you for the warning. But perhaps it's time someone gave the Council something to imagine." The alien looked shocked and hurried away. Jake continued walking, his mind already racing ahead to the next phase. The Council had made their demand clear. Now it was time for humanity to craft their response. Behind him, the great chamber buzzed with nervous conversation as species representatives tried to understand what they had just witnessed. For the first time in living memory, a species had not immediately bowed to the Council's will. The galaxy was about to learn that humans approached problems differently than everyone else. The shuttle bay doors of the Liberty's Edge closed behind Jake Harrison with a soft hiss. The familiar smell of recycled air and metal polish filled his nose as he stepped onto the deck of the human colony ship. After hours on the alien station, being surrounded by human technology felt like coming home. "Commander Harrison," a voice called out. Admiral Lisa Chun walked toward him, her uniform crisp despite the long hours she had been working. Behind her came Dr. Ben Rodriguez, the Colonial Council representative, and Amy Walsh, the chief engineer who kept their small fleet running. "Admiral," Jake nodded, "we need to talk." All of us. They made their way through the ship's corridors to the main conference room. The Liberty's Edge was not a warship, but a massive vessel designed to carry families and equipment to new worlds. Children's drawings hung on some walls, and the sound of normal life echoed through the halls. This was what they were trying to protect. The conference room was small compared to the council chamber, but it felt more real. Earth's blue and green flag hung on one next to pictures of the 17 human colonies. A large screen showed the positions of their small escort fleet floating nearby. So what did they want? Admiral Chen asked as they sat down around the metal table. Jake pulled up the files on his tablet and connected it to the room's display. Numbers filled the screen, cold and precise. 40% of all industrial output from every human world, plus forced relocation of 3 million colonists to reservation worlds they control. Dr. Rodriguez leaned back in his chair, his face pale. "That's impossible. 40% would kill our expansion completely. Our colonies are barely self-sufficient. As it is, the relocations are worse," Amy Walsh said, studying the data. "They want to break up established communities. Families who have lived together for generations would be scattered across different worlds." Admiral Chun crossed her arms. "And if we refuse?" "They have an enforcement fleet ready to move," Jake said. 300 ships from 6 different species. They've done this before, many times. Every species in that chamber today pays tribute to the Council. "Except us," Dr. Rodriguez said quietly. "Except us," Jake agreed. "We have 72 hours to give them our answer." The room fell silent. Through the large window, they could see the Nexus station in the distance, its lights twinkling like a small city. It looked peaceful, but they all knew the power it represented. "Admiral." Chun leaned forward. What are our options? As I see it, we have three choices. We can comply and accept that humanity will be servants for the rest of time. We can run, pack up everyone, and flee to the outer rim where the Council doesn't patrol. Or we can refuse and fight. Fighting seems like suicide, Dr. Rodriguez said. 300 ships against our 12 escorts? We're not even a military fleet. Amy Walsh looked thoughtful. What about Earth? Have you been in contact with home? Jake smiled for the first time since returning from the station. I have, and Earth's government has already made their decision about tribute. He touched his tablet again, and the display changed to show a heavily encrypted message. This came through the quantum relay an hour ago. Earth's response is very clear. Humanity will not pay tribute to anyone. That's brave, Admiral Chun said. But bravery doesn't stop plasma cannons. No, Jake agreed, but preparation does. He stood up and walked to the window. Tell me, have any of you wondered why Earth has been so quiet lately? Why they've been building so many new orbital platforms and research stations? Dr. Rodriguez frowned. I assumed it was normal expansion. Earth's population is growing and they need more infrastructure. Some of it is normal expansion, Jake said, but not all of it. Earth has been preparing for this moment since we made first contact with alien species 50 years ago. They knew eventually we would meet someone who wanted to control us. The display changed again, showing technical drawings and construction photos. Amy Walsh gasped as she recognized the designs. These are warships, massive ones. But I've never seen technology like this before. Reverse-engineered alien technology, Jake explained. Every crashed probe, every abandoned ship part, every piece of alien tech we've found over the decades. Earth's best scientists have been studying it, improving it, and building new weapons based on what they learned. Admiral Chun stared at the images. Are you telling us Earth has a secret military fleet? I'm telling you that Earth has been preparing for this conversation since before most of our colonies were founded. Admiral Sam Foster is overseeing the final construction of the new ships right now. The room erupted in excited whispers. Amy Walsh pulled up technical specifications on her own tablet, trying to understand the new technology. Dr. Rodriguez looked at population figures and resource allocations with fresh eyes. But even if Earth has new ships, Admiral Chun said, can they get here in time? We only have 72 hours. Jake walked back to the table and sat down. They don't need to get here. They're already here. What do you mean? Dr. Rodriguez asked. The Council thinks they're dealing with a primitive species that just learned to travel between stars. They don't know about human stealth technology or our ability to move fleets without being detected. They certainly don't know about the new ships that have been positioned throughout human space over the past 6 months. Amy Walsh looked up from her tablet. You're saying there are hidden warships in our system right now? I'm saying the Council is about to learn that humans don't think like other species. When we're threatened, we don't just surrender or run away. We prepare, we adapt, and we make sure we're ready for whatever comes next. Admiral Chun leaned back in her chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. So what's our real response? Going to be? Jake touched his tablet one more time. A short message appeared on the screen, just a few sentences long. We're going to politely decline their offer. And then we're going to suggest they reconsider their position. That's it. Dr. Rodriguez asked. Just a polite refusal? Sometimes, Jake said, the most powerful message is the simplest one. The Council has never been refused before. They won't know how to respond to a species that isn't afraid of them. Through the window, the Nexus station continued its slow rotation, unaware that the galaxy's balance of power was about to shift forever. In a few hours, humanity would send their response, and the Council would learn that some species could not be intimidated into submission. The meeting continued as they planned the next phase, but the decision was already made. Humanity would not pay tribute to anyone, and they had the means to back up that refusal. The galaxy was about to discover that humans approached problems very differently than everyone else. The war room deep inside the Nexus station buzzed with activity. Dozens of alien officers moved between control stations, their different languages creating a symphony of clicks, hums, and electronic sounds. Holographic displays showed star maps, fleet positions, and tactical data from across the galaxy. General Vexthal stood at the center of it all, his massive form towering over the smaller beings around him. The Korthic warrior was 8 feet tall with thick gray skin covered in natural armor plates. His forearms moved constantly as he reviewed reports and gave orders. Vexthal had been enforcing the Council's will for over 2 centuries, and he had never failed to bring a rebellious species to heel. "Status report," he rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. A thin, blue-skinned officer approached, carrying a data tablet. "Fleet composition is complete, General. We have 312 vessels from 6 species. The flagship Eternal Order is ready for deployment." Vexthal studied the numbers. The enforcement fleet was massive, bigger than most species had ever seen in one place. Korthic battle cruisers formed the backbone, supported by Zalari fast attack. Ships, Threnody heavy bombers, and vessels from 3 other Council species. It was enough firepower to flatten a planet. "And the human response to our generous offer?" Vexthal asked. "Nothing yet, General. They still have 18 hours remaining." "They will surrender," Vexthal said confidently. "They always do. Primitive species cannot comprehend the power of the Council." Across the station, in a small diplomatic quarters, Karatel sat at her desk trying to look busy. The young Velari had been assigned to monitor human communications, but she found herself sympathizing with their situation. Her own people had been forced to pay tribute for 800 years, and she remembered the stories her grandmother told about life before the Council. Her silver skin shimmered as she accessed the communication logs. The humans had been sending messages back and forth to their colonies and homeworld, but most were encrypted beyond her ability to decode. What she could read worried her. The humans were not panicking. They were not begging for mercy or trying to negotiate lower tribute payments. Instead, their messages seemed calm and organized, as if they were preparing for something specific. Karatel had studied human history as part of her diplomatic training. She knew about their wars, their refusal to surrender even when facing impossible odds, and their tendency to find unexpected solutions to problems. The Council might be making a terrible mistake. She made a decision that could cost her everything. Opening a secure channel, she began typing a message to Commander Harrison. Meanwhile, in the human colony of New Angeles, families were loading their most precious belongings onto transport ships. The evacuation was quiet and orderly, with no signs of panic. Children asked their parents why they were leaving, and the adults gave simple answers about taking a short trip to visit relatives. Colonial Administrator Pete Murphy watched the loading process from his office window. New Angeles was home to 4 million people, all of whom had worked hard to build a life on this world. The farms were just starting to produce good crops, and the factories were finally running at full capacity. "Sir," his assistant Mary Collins said from the doorway, "we have a priority message from the Liberty's Edge." Pete turned from the window. "What does it say?" Mary handed him the tablet. The message was short and clear. "Phase 2 begins in 6 hours. Evacuate all non-essential personnel. Prepare orbital defenses for combat configuration." Pete nodded and activated the colony's emergency communication system. Within minutes, the evacuation pace quickened. Most civilians would be safely away before the Council fleet arrived, but some would stay to operate the defensive systems and maintain the illusion of a normal colony back on the Nexus station. The first human response finally arrived. Every Council member gathered in the chamber to hear humanity's surrender. Zeth Kalar's crystal form glowed with satisfaction as he prepared to welcome another species into tributary status. The message was broadcast throughout the station, reaching every diplomat and officer. Jake Harrison's voice echoed through the chambers, calm and clear. "To the Galactic Prosperity Council," he began. "The United Colonies of Earth have carefully considered your proposal. After extensive consultation with our government and colonial representatives, we must respectfully decline your offer." A shocked silence fell over the chamber. Council members looked at each other in disbelief. In 3,000 years, no species had ever refused tribute. Furthermore, Jake's voice continued, we suggest that the Council reconsider its position regarding human sovereignty. Our colonies will remain under human control, and we will not relocate our citizens to reservation. Worlds, Zethkalar's crystal body flashed bright red with anger. Impossible, they cannot refuse. This is madness. General Vexthal's laughter boomed through the communications system. Excellent. It has been too long since we had a proper demonstration of Council power. The other species were becoming too comfortable. Within an hour, the enforcement fleet was moving toward human space. The massive ships formed a standard pacification formation designed to intimidate planets into immediate surrender. The flagship Eternal Order led the way, its kilometer-long hull bristling with weapons that had destroyed countless worlds. As the fleet approached New Angeles, Vexthal studied the tactical displays. The human colony looked pathetically defended, with only a few orbital platforms and some civilian vessels. Their 12 escort ships were laughably outnumbered. General, one of his officers reported, we're receiving a communication from the human colony. Put it through, Vexthal ordered. Jake Harrison's image appeared on the main screen. He stood on the bridge of the Liberty's Edge, looking surprisingly calm for someone facing overwhelming odds. General Vexthal, Jake said. I am Commander Harrison representing the human colonies. This is your only warning. Withdraw your fleet immediately or face the consequences. The bridge of the Eternal Order erupted in laughter. Even Vexthal's stern expression cracked into a smile. Human, you are either very brave or very foolish. Do you see the size of my fleet? Do you understand the power you are facing? I understand perfectly, Jake replied. The question is whether you understand what you're facing. Threats from a primitive species, Vexthal growled. You have no idea what real power looks like. Jake's expression didn't change. Actually, General, I think you're about to learn what real power looks like. Last chance to withdraw peacefully. Vexthal cut the communication and turned to his weapons officer. Target their orbital platforms. One demonstration shot should be enough to convince them. The Council fleet moved into attack formation, confident that the humans would surrender as soon. As the first shots were fired, they had no idea that everything they thought they knew about human military capability was about to change forever. On the bridge of the Liberty's Edge, Jake Harrison watched the alien fleet approach. His fingers hovered over the communication controls, ready to send the signal that would change galactic history. The Council had demanded tribute, and humanity was about to give them an answer they would never forget. The first shots came from the Korthak battlecruisers, bright beams of plasma energy that had melted the hulls of 1,000 ships. General Vexthal watched with satisfaction as the weapons struck New Angeles orbital platforms. The demonstration would be brief but decisive, showing the humans exactly what they were facing, but something was wrong. The plasma beams hit the platforms and simply disappeared, absorbed by energy shields that should not have existed. The platforms themselves looked like simple mining stations, but they were still intact after taking direct hits from weapons. That could crack asteroids, status report, Vexthal demanded. No damage to enemy targets, General, his weapons officer reported, confusion clear in his voice. Their shields are still at full strength. Impossible. Those are primitive defensive platforms. Increase power and fire again. The second volley was twice as strong as the first. 50 ships opened fire at once, filling space with deadly energy. The human platforms absorbed every shot without their shields even flickering. Then, for the first time in the battle, the humans fired back. The orbital platforms suddenly transformed before the Council fleet's eyes. What looked like simple mining equipment folded away to reveal massive weapon batteries. The platforms fired in perfect coordination, sending beams of pure energy that cut through space faster than anything the Council had ever seen. The first beam struck the Korthak cruiser Devastator and passed completely through it. The ship broke apart in a shower of metal and escaping atmosphere. The second beam destroyed 2 Zelari fighters before they could even change course. Within seconds, 6 Council ships were gone. Shields up, Vexthal roared. All ships evasive. Maneuvers! But the human weapons seemed to track their targets perfectly. Another platform fired, and the beam sliced through the shields of a Threnody bomber like they were made of paper. The massive ship exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up the entire battlefield. General, his communications officer called out, we're receiving massive energy readings from the edge of the system. Something big is coming. The space around? New Angeles began to shimmer and twist. The Council fleet's sensors went wild as reality itself seemed to bend. Then, appearing from nothing like a ghost becoming solid, the largest warship any of them had ever seen materialized directly behind the Council formation. The ship was enormous, easily twice the size of the Eternal Order. Its hull was dark gray with lines of blue light running along its length. Weapon ports covered every surface, and its shield generators glowed with power that made the air itself seem to vibrate. By the void, Vexthal whispered. What is that thing? A new voice came over the communication channel, speaking in calm, measured tones. This is Captain Ryan Blake of the Earth Defense Force warship Defiance. General Vexthal, you have 30 seconds to withdraw your fleet from human space, or we will demonstrate why tribute is not an option for humanity. Vexthal S. Tactical display showed the human ship's position and size. It was impossible. No species could build something that large without the Council knowing about it. The humans were supposed to be primitive, barely capable of traveling between stars. You're bluffing, Vexthal snarled into the communicator. No single ship can face my entire fleet. 20 seconds, Captain Blake replied. Pride and centuries of easy victories clouded Vexthal's judgment. All ships, target that vessel. Show these humans what happens when they threaten the Council. The entire enforcement fleet turned their weapons on the Defiance. 300 ships fired at once, unleashing enough firepower to destroy a moon. Plasma cannons, particle beams, gravity bombs, and fusion torpedoes filled the space around the human ship with deadly energy. The Defiance's shields flared as the weapons struck home. For a moment, it seemed like the massive ship might be overwhelmed by the sheer volume of fire. Then the light faded, and the human warship sat exactly where it had been before, completely undamaged. Impressive, Captain Blake said over the radio. Our turn. The Defiance fired a single shot from its main weapon. The beam was different from anything the Council had seen before, white-hot and perfectly focused. It struck the Eternal Order shields and passed through them, like they were made of air. The beam cut through the Council flagship's hull with surgical precision, slicing through armor, weapons, and vital systems. It was not designed to destroy, but to disable. The massive ship went dark as its power systems failed, leaving it floating helplessly in space. Surrender now, Captain Blake commanded, and your crews will be allowed to return home safely. But General Vexthal was too shocked to respond. Around him, his bridge crew stared at their displays in disbelief. The most powerful warship in the Council fleet had been defeated by a single shot from a species they thought was primitive. General, his sensor officer called out, we're detecting more ships, lots of them. Space around the Council fleet began to shimmer again. One by one, human warships appeared from stealth, their cloaking systems deactivating to reveal a fleet that matched the Council's numbers. Each ship was sleek and deadly, bristling with weapons that used technology the Council had never seen. Admiral Lisa Chun's voice joined the communication channel from the Liberty's Edge. General Vexthal, you are surrounded. Your flagship is disabled and you have already lost 12 ships. Order your fleet to withdraw, or we will be forced to defend ourselves. The Council fleet found itself trapped between the human orbital platforms and the newly revealed human warships. Their most powerful ship was helpless, and they had no idea how to fight enemies who could appear and disappear at will. This is impossible, Vexthal muttered. The humans are supposed to be weak. Our intelligence said they had no military capability. Your intelligence was wrong, Captain Blake replied. We've been preparing for this moment for 50 years. Earth's scientists have been studying every piece of alien technology they could. Find, improving it, and building weapons that your species cannot match. More human ships decloaked throughout the system. The Council fleet was completely surrounded, outgunned, and facing technology they couldn't understand. For the first time in his long military career, General Vextel realized he was facing an enemy that was superior in every way. "General," his communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving surrender requests from 17 of our ships. They're asking permission to withdraw." Vextel looked at his tactical display one more time. The human ships waited patiently. Their weapons trained on his fleet but not firing. They had made their point clearly. The Council's mighty enforcement fleet was helpless against humanity's true military power. "Signal the fleet," he said heavily. "We're withdrawing to a safe distance." The warning shot had been delivered, and the message was clear. Humanity would not pay tribute to anyone, and they had the power to make that refusal stick. The galaxy was about to learn that some species could not be conquered, only respected. The news of the Council fleet's defeat spread through the galaxy like wildfire. On 1,000 worlds, beings who had paid tribute for centuries gathered around communication screens to watch the impossible footage. The mighty enforcement fleet, led by the legendary General Vextel, had been forced to retreat by a species most had never heard of. On the Nexus station, panic ruled the corridors. Council members called emergency meetings while their staff ran between offices carrying urgent messages. The crystal spires that had stood as symbols of absolute power for 3,000 years now seemed fragile and uncertain. Supreme Arbiter Zethkalar stood in his private chambers, staring out at the stars. His crystal form flickered between colors as he tried to process what had happened. The humans had not only refused tribute, but had proven they could back up their refusal with military force beyond anything the Council possessed. "Supreme Arbiter." His assistant entered the chamber. "The emergency session is ready to begin." The Council chamber was filled with tension when Zethkalar arrived. All 12 members were present, along with dozens of military advisors and diplomatic staff. The holographic displays showed the tactical reports from the battle, numbers that made no sense to beings who had never faced defeat. "How is this possible?" demanded the squid-like council member from his liquid tank. "Our intelligence said the humans were primitive. They barely had space travel 50 years ago. Clearly our intelligence was wrong," rumbled the mountain-like being of living stone. "The question now is, what do we do about it?" General Vextel, appearing via hologram from his damaged flagship, looked older than his 2 centuries. "Supreme Arbiter, the human fleet uses technology we do not understand. Their ships can appear and disappear at will. Their weapons cut through our best shields like they were made of air. And their defensive capabilities are beyond anything we have encountered." "Are you saying we cannot defeat them?" Zethkalar asked. "I'm saying that trying to defeat them might cost us everything we have built." The humans demonstrated restraint today. "They could have destroyed my entire fleet, but they chose not to." That shows wisdom, but also incredible confidence in their abilities. Across the galaxy, other species were having their own emergency meetings. On the Zellari homeworld, young Ambassador Karatel addressed her people's ruling council. "The humans have shown us something we thought was impossible. A species can refuse the council and survive." Similar conversations were happening on dozens of worlds. The Threnody, who had been paying tribute for 800 years, quietly began moving their most advanced warships to defensive positions. The Milari started recalling their tribute payments, claiming administrative delays. Even the peaceful Kresh began asking questions about the legal basis for the tributary system. Back on the Nexus station, Jake Harrison walked through the corridors with a different bearing than before. Guards who had once looked down on him now stepped aside respectfully. Other species representatives watched him with mixtures of fear, curiosity, and something that might have been hope. The council chamber had been rearranged since his last visit. Instead of the circle of massive seats looking down on a single position, a proper negotiating table had been set up. Jake sat across from the 12 council members as an equal, not as a supplicant. "Commander Harrison," Zethkalar began. his crystal form a neutral blue color. "We have asked you here to discuss the new situation between humanity and the Council." "I appreciate the invitation," Jake replied calmly, "though I should mention that my title has changed. Earth's government has promoted me to Ambassador Harrison, and I now speak for all human colonies with full authority." The promotion was significant, and everyone in the room understood it. Earth was treating this as a diplomatic negotiation between equals, not a plea for mercy. "Very well, Ambassador," Seth Kalar continued. "The Council is prepared to discuss a new arrangement regarding human expansion and territorial rights." "That's generous," Jake said. "But before we begin, I want to make something clear. Humanity will not pay tribute to anyone, ever. We will not relocate our colonists to reservation worlds. And we will not ask permission to settle on empty planets." The Council members exchanged glances. These were the same demands they had made, but now the humans were stating them as facts rather than requests. "In exchange," Jake continued, "humanity is willing to recognize existing territorial boundaries and respect the sovereignty of other species. We want to be good neighbors, not conquerors." The negotiations took 3 days. Word of the talks spread throughout the galaxy, and representatives from dozens of species arrived to observe. Many brought formal questions about their own tributary obligations, forcing the Council to address concerns they had ignored for centuries. The final agreement was called the Treaty of New Geneva, named after the human colony where the enforcement fleet had been defeated. The treaty established humanity as an independent power with rights to their claimed territories and future expansion into unclaimed space. More importantly, the treaty created a new framework for galactic relations. Instead of the old system where the Council demanded tribute from everyone, the new agreement established principles of mutual respect and voluntary cooperation. Dr. Ben Rodriguez, now serving as Earth's first official galactic ambassador, signed the treaty on behalf of humanity. As he put down his pen, he looked around the chamber at representatives from dozens of species, many of whom were quietly taking notes about the new precedent. "This is just the beginning," he said to Jake after the ceremony. "Other species are watching what we've done. They're realizing they don't have to accept the old system anymore." Jake nodded, looking out at the stars visible through the chamber's massive windows. 50 years ago, humanity was alone in the galaxy. Today, we've shown everyone that independence is possible. Tomorrow, we might not be the only species refusing to pay tribute. The consequences of humanity's refusal rippled outward from the Nexus Station. The Korthek military, embarrassed by their defeat, began developing new weapons and tactics. The Zilari quietly started building their own advanced warships. A dozen other species began questioning their tributary obligations and demanding new negotiations. On the edge of human space, the Defiance continued its patrol, a visible reminder that some species could not be conquered. Captain Ryan Blake stood on his bridge, watching the stars and thinking about the future. The galaxy was changing, and humanity had been the catalyst for that change. The Council had demanded tribute, expecting another species to bow to their will. Instead, they had awakened something that would reshape the balance of power among the stars. Humanity had answered their demand with a warning shot, and the galaxy would never be the same again.